I'm Damien Fowler.
And I'm Eileen Sliffring.
And welcome to this edition of The Current Podcast.
The Current is your deep dive into the future of TV, media, and data-driven marketing, all explained in plain English.
We talk to the biggest names in digital marketing, and this week we sit down with Noel Mack, the Chief Brand Officer of the British fitness apparel brand Gymshark.
Gymshark is easily becoming one of the most talked about brands online. What started off in 2012 as a homegrown operation is now a global brand. Gymshark, especially popular with Gen Zers, sells directly to consumers in 180 countries in 13 different languages.
Noel Mack, named as one of Adweek's top marketing chiefs of 2022, joined Gymshark 6 years ago. He manages the brand's global strategy and brand marketing. Let's start with some really big news. We read recently that your CEO and founder, Ben Francis, just received his MBE at Windsor Castle from Prince William, awarded for services to the business sector. You know, that really speaks a lot to the incredible success of the brand. What's your reaction?
I'm immensely proud of him. I now have two friends who've received MBEs, Ben and the late great Jamal Edwards as well. And I wrote on LinkedIn this morning saying because they're sort of Ben is around the 30-year-old mark. People always refer to them as like a great example for the next generation. I sort of disagree with that. I think they're a great example for literally everybody at any age. Anybody who's ever dreamed of something seemingly bigger than themselves or, wanted to change their stars. Ben was a pizza boy that had an idea and he was lining furnaces with his granddad when Gymshark became a thing. Jamal was a kid with a camera who was passionate about music and turned that into one of the foremost YouTube channels we've ever seen and sort of changed the scene of UK music forever, I think. So Ben and Jamal, both of them, I think, are incredible inspirations for anybody who's ever dreamed of achieving anything and breaking out the box they were maybe born into.
Also, for those who might not know, including me, because I'm born and bred American, but what is an MBE?
An MBE stands for a member of the British Empire. I think it's essentially like if you've served the United Kingdom, it's a recognition from the royal family to say well done for that. So I think Ben's was officially for services to the business sector of the kingdom. It's a nod from the royal family to say thank you for what you've done to the UK.
Clearly the brand has achieved, major name recognition, even going all the way up to the palace. What is it about the brand that is so appealing?
I think people are really proud of Ben's story in particular and the Gymshark story, seeing something like this come out of the UK. I think we're one of two businesses that have ever made it to unicorn status from the UK, bootstrapped. So I think the British people are impressed with that story. It's a real sort of, the fact that Ben was a pizza boy and came from very humble working class beginnings. I think it's a story that lots of people, resonate with and get behind. The brand from like a consumer point of view, I think we stood up and represented a subculture which nobody had done yet. When Gymshark started, you had the Nikes and the Addies representing sports insanely well, right? Doing a great job of that. And then gymwear was definitely somewhat neglected on the other end of the spectrum. Gymwear was like this intimidating, very masculine, like big guys on Venice Beach in California lifting. But there was a new subculture emerging between those two things that were neither sports nor were they, the other. There was this thing in between of people who were really conscious of, being healthy and making themselves stronger and exercising for mental health and stuff like that. And Gymshark was the first brand that stood up, represented that. So I suppose in a way, we're not Nike, we're not Adidas, we're not Lululemon. And that's why people love us, because we stand for something quite unique.
You kind of created Gymshark to fit a new way of exercising, a new way of thinking, maybe a new kind of lifestyle. Could you talk a little bit more about what that is and how you identified it?
In the early days of Gymshark, it was young kids who couldn't find anything they wanted to wear personally, literally scratching their own itch. Do you know what I mean? Like stringer vests that were available in the bodybuilding world in America weren't available here in Europe. So we started making them. Gymshark wasn't even the name of the brand at first. It was a domain name for a website that sold all manner of different gym things. And then it evolved into being Gymshark, the brand. So it was young guys scratching their own itch. Ben took his pizza boy salary, turned that into £100 worth of sales, turned that into £1,000 worth of sales, 10,000 and so on, all the way up to a valuation after 7.5 years of $1.45 billion.
You have over 12 years of experience in brand strategy and marketing. Can you describe your own journey to Gymshark, where you have basically spent like roughly half of your career?
It's an addictive place to be. So so my journey is a very, very non-typical one. I started in music. I fell in love with, whilst in music, the way the music industry went about marketing. I thought it was really, really smart. I went to university to do music production, and while there, we did some units on music business, and I was just absolutely enthralled with it. I loved it. So I made some music. My music career was good. The highest point was probably when I found myself in a room with Drake doing some work together, which was really, really cool. And then I made some money in music and decided that we would start an agency, taking some of these music industry techniques and applying them to businesses. And it was a tough slog at first. It was really tough. CMOs and clients didn't really understand why community should be a thing. Like at the time, bands were doing it really well on MySpace. I was trying to apply that to businesses. They didn't really understand why content was important. So it was a hard sell at first. And there was some jobs that we did that we were really proud of. Some that was a bit boring, if I'm honest, but it paid well. And then one day a client comes along, which is a couple of guys who were similar sort of age to me, from a similar area to me. And they said they had this idea, this business called Gymshark. And they were in, I don't know, like the second year of trading, something like that. And they were like, I didn't have to bring the horse to water. They already got it. They already got the community thing. They already got the content thing. Why that's so important. They understood the importance of social media. So with them, it was great because I didn't have to do any of the selling or convincing. It was just about the work. Those first few bits of work that we did went really viral. And then for about 2 years, I consulted for the brand until one day where Ben came to me and said, would you be interested in coming on board? I said no at first. I wasn't interested. And then I was driving along listening to a podcast with Sheryl Sandberg. And she was talking about the decision she made to jump to this little startup called Facebook, right? And they asked her why she made the decision. And she said, well, I wasn't particularly happy with the role that Mark was offering me. But I thought to myself, if the rocket ship's taking off, don't worry about your seat, just get on it. And I'm driving along and I had this like moment of realization that, oh no, he's Gymshark my rocket ship. It's going to take off without me. So I called Ben that day and Steve, the CEO at the time, and I said, this is probably a year later since he first said it. I said, you're still interested in me coming on board? And he was like, yeah. So went to the office that day, shook hands, came on board, brought one of the guys from my agency with me who still works here. And I'm really proud to say that was 6 years ago. And I don't think a single day since I've thought that wasn't the right decision. Do you know what I mean? It's been an amazing roller coaster. Even the darkest of days, or the times where you felt most painted into a corner or most up against it, have still been such a phenomenal part of the journey. So I'm really glad that I did.
Speaking about like the journey, what would you say have been like the biggest challenges, and how did you like work to position the brand itself in a very competitive marketplace with such dominant brands now? I'm talking about like the Lululemons of the world or like Under Armour's. I mean, it's always tough for a startup.
In the world of influencer marketing, which many people have credited us for being as like really early to that channel, in the world of forums that then became Facebook groups, that then became Instagram pages, that then became TikTok, we didn't really see much of those brands. They weren't really doing it the way we did it. So we've really only started getting concerned about them more recently. And when I say concerned, we're not that concerned. They're just, they're in your peripheral vision as they've started to sort of come over to our side of marketing, if that makes sense. But, we weren't competing for Super Bowl ads or in the big areas that they play, or, we weren't going up against them in contract negotiations for Colin Kaepernick or, for Alicia Keys to sing the soundtrack, because we didn't have money like that. We weren't in those conversations. We found ourselves there now, thankfully, but I think we've come up in a different route, if that makes sense.
You've carved out your own like little niche. What would you say are like the major messaging touch points that the brand really tries to encapsulate in its marketing?
I'd love everybody who comes into contact with Gymshark to be able to repeat these two things about the brand: fitness and community. Really, really simple. But I think we're very, very early to that. And I think it's really true with us as well. So those are the two things, like the core tenets of the Gymshark brand. I think that the kinds of people Gymshark use in its marketing are a lot more relatable and a lot more achievable, if that makes sense, than I think a lot of our competitors. So I think you hear this a lot in diversity and inclusion conversations. People say, if you see it, you can be it. I think that people look at Gymshark athletes, Gymshark ambassadors, Gymshark influencers, or the people that we use in campaigns, and they go, oh, I could be that, right? Like if you walk into our flagship store on Regent Street, you don't see highly retouched, wonderful people who've won gold medals and, broken world records and stuff like that. You see like decidedly average physiques, if I'm completely honest with you. We don't say it explicitly, but I think implicitly, when you see all these touch points of the Gymshark brand, you realise, this is a brand for real people.
And on that point, I wanted to talk a little bit about the first North American campaign, United We Sweat, which I know came out last year, and it has that message of inclusivity. And also, you used Ultra Brand studio in London, which, features chef and fitness influencer LaToya Shante Snell. Can you talk a little bit about this campaign and how that relates back to what you were just saying and the importance of that theme, United We Sweat?
It wasn't actually a North American campaign. It was a global campaign, but it was centered out of a human truth that came from North America, if I'm honest. That came along during a time where, right, it was post-COVID, there was so much tension, and it was born out of this idea that, like, at the moment, as a people, as a generation, we seem to be so divided, right? It was wrong, it was left versus right, it was black versus white, it was wrong versus right. Like, everybody had an opinion, and there was so much tension in the air, it felt like. This was kind of our way of saying, like, the gym should be that safe space where that's irrelevant, right? Fitness should be that safe space that's irrelevant. Like, when you're on a team and you've got teammates and one of you might be injured or one of you might fumble the ball or whatever else, you're not questioning their political biases or anything like that. It's about teamwork, and the gym should be that safe space. And you see somebody spotting someone in the gym and they run over and help them. Like, there's an implicit community about that. So it was a take on where we were in the world at the time, and it was also a take on the gym can be your escape from all of this noise.
It's interesting to me that brands are able to kind of intersect with, what's going on in the world. It's not like, here's our product, which is completely separate from the world. This is, you are talking back to what's happening.
I'm a big believer that, like, the consumer these days is a lot smarter, a lot more switched on, a lot more in tune with where they spend their money. I don't think any longer it's, I give you cash, you give me product. I want to know what you stand for. I want to know what you believe in. I'm really proud of that. I think that's a really cool dynamic which has emerged between consumers and brands.
Obviously, Gymshark saw its sales soar during the pandemic. Now that things are somewhat back to normal, how would you compare, like, consumers' overall demand now?
I think the demand has just changed, that's all. So Business of Fashion referred to this as, I'm going to try and get this right, ready? They referred to it as the athleisurification of everything. In other words, everyone's work attire changed, right? I wore a tracksuit the other day to a board meeting, right? Previously, that wouldn't have been acceptable. But in this world where it was almost like you had athleisure, fitness, gym wear here, then there was a clear distinction, and then, like, the clothes that you wear during the day, right, to go into work or to go to meetings or whatever it might be. Those worlds are just completely blended together. Do you know what I mean?
I mean, I'm seeing, like, formal shoes with, like a sneaker base, that kind of thing. And that's very much more common. Especially, I see that for men and women's shoes, for example, which, why be uncomfortable?
On a separate note, we are now in Cannes Lions season, and we're going to be there ourselves. We're pretty excited about it. You have a particular take on Cannes Lion, as I understand. What's been your experience?
I think this is born out of the fact somebody asked me why they haven't seen me there or why I haven't been there much. My honest answer back then was we were so busy, like, connecting with our community, we didn't have time to go out there and sort of pat ourselves on the back, as it were. I understand bigger businesses do have that luxury. Unfortunately, we didn't. I actually then completely contradicted to myself and went last year because AKQA and TikTok asked if I'd come out, and I was like, no, Cannes Lion isn't really for me. And they said, no, hold on. We're doing like the challenger thing. We're doing like the anti-Cannes Lion stage. Do you want to come and talk about that? And I was like, that's quite cool, actually. So just, being kind of disruptive by nature and, the way Gymshark is, I thought that's tempting. So I went out there and did it. And I have to admit, it was really cool. It was great to see that whole community out there. Whether I go this year or not, I think that's up in the air. But it was really cool to be there last year, and I got to meet some amazing people. So I wouldn't criticize it. It's just not particularly me, if that makes sense.
Gymshark has a huge social media presence, and you use influencers a lot to grow demand for the brand online. I believe the brand now has over 6 million Instagram followers, 4.5 million TikTok followers. Celebs like Hailey Bieber and Hilary Duff sport the brand all the time. What would you say is Gymshark's most successful, social campaign so far? And why would you say it was so successful?
So I'm going to have to fact check you there. We have over 6 million followers on one of our accounts, but Gymshark's actually got 3 accounts on Instagram because we segment audiences a little bit on there. So we have Gymshark, Gymshark Women, and Gymshark Lifting. So we actually have over 10 million on Instagram. But anyway, so we're huge fans of social media. And the thing you just said is it's actually a bit of a common misconception of and again, this goes back to what I was talking about, sort of with Cannes, sort of with us not doing things in the traditional way. I couldn't name you one single Gymshark social media campaign because we never thought in terms of campaign. Gymshark's success on social media is sort of like success by 1,000 cuts, right? We're out there every single day posting stuff every single day. Some stuff has gone more viral than others, and then others have referred to it as a campaign, but we've never done that. Do you know what I mean? Like, we have this 24/7 constant conversation with our consumer, and it also means we're constantly iterating, trying to understand what they like as well, which you can imagine the data we can harvest from that, right, in terms of products that they like and whatever else. It's not just social media strategy. So there isn't one particular thing which I could pull out. There was a crazy moment I'll give you just to sort of satiate the need to hang our hat on something. During COVID, I have a neighbour down the street, and I know we all know one of these guys, one of these people who they're constantly changing what they do. Right, 1 minute they're selling fishing rods, next minute surfboards, and they're always trying to make a buck here or there. And he said to me, "Oh no," I was like, we were allowed out during lockdown briefly. He said, "Noel, I'm doing out of home advertising now," and I thought, well, that makes sense. No one's out of their home. That would be why you're selling it, right? And he said, "I can get you 1 Times Square for $5,000," and I said, "What's 1 Times Square?" I was like, "Not the big one where like the ball." Yeah. And I was like, $5,000 for 1 Times Square. He said, "Yeah, for the day, $5,000." And again, it was obviously cheap because nobody was out of their house, right? No one was going to see it. And I thought to myself, there's got to be something in that. Like, and so to be honest, I sort of said, "Yeah, we'll take it" on a whim. Then turned around to the team and said, "Figure something out. Like, that's an opportunity for sure." And obviously, the creative challenge there is, no one's going to be out of their home, so they're not going to see it. So it has to be something that, makes noise online. So what do we do? So we're coming up with the concepts, we're storyboarding, we're doing mock-ups, we're doing all this stuff. What we decided to do in the end, going back to what I said earlier, was we're the fitness and community brand, right? Let's let the community decide. So we tweeted saying, blow this tweet up. Whoever gets the most engagement on a reply to this, we'll take your tweet and post it on 1 Times Square. So the tweets start flooding in, people telling you about their cookie shop on, 42nd and Broadway or whatever else it would be, or, "Hey, my name's Dave, follow me on Instagram," or whatever else. But then the influencers pile on and they start telling their audiences to vote for them and to upload their tweet because they want to get their thing on. Music stars, all sorts of stuff. It starts kicking off, and the engagement for this tweet went absolutely ridiculous. I don't have the stats to hand, but it was crazy. Now at this point, they're all tweeting and they're all trying to start their own campaign. A musician from the States got involved called Corpse Husband, huge online following in the gaming community as well, got the most insane stats, and it was trending and, literally hundreds and hundreds of thousands of likes and comments and whatever else. At this point, I'm thinking, for $5,000, I'll take that, right? Even if this does nothing more, the fact that we just kicked off this competition, which did all these huge accounts online, I'll take that. But it didn't end there. We made good by our promise. We closed the competition at a certain time. We put Corpse's tweet up, which was about his new single that he was putting out. And when we put it up, there was a live stream that we got. We went on. He had a huge gaming following, so gamers love Twitch. So we streamed it live on Twitch. Something like 80,000 people tuned in live just to watch the billboard go live in Times Square, right? And then we could see in the bottom of the stream all these heads of all these people that had gathered. They probably shouldn't have, by the way, in Times Square to watch it go up. People bought cardboard cutouts of him and took selfies with it. Long story short, that trended number 2 on Twitter worldwide. The only thing that beat us was the UFC that was on that night. And obviously, you can imagine sort of money they were pouring into promoting that. It was like a big fight or whatever else. And we got that trending number 2 on Twitter. It did, in the end, something like 1 billion impressions, all for $5,000 and a little bit of creative thinking. So yeah, that was it. That was a moment that definitely, like I said, it's death by 1,000 cuts, but some of those cuts are deeper than others.
You mentioned digital out of home, and that's a channel we talk about here. And then we also talk a lot about connected TV and streaming platforms. But it sounds like you're not running campaigns specifically for those platforms, or are you? Are you thinking about, possibilities in the future of what streaming opportunities there might be out there for campaigns?
We are, but it's case by case. I'd say we don't just look at a channel and go, that's a good channel, or that's not a good channel. It's like, right, we have this message, we have this audience, we have this whatever else it be. What are the appropriate channels for that, right? So next Saturday, Katie Taylor, who is one of the most phenomenal female athletes you've ever seen in your life. She quite literally got women's boxing into the Olympics. She won gold for Ireland. She's undisputed at 2 weight classes. She was the first woman to ever headline Madison Square Garden. She's fighting in Dublin. She's from Dublin. She's fighting in Dublin for the first time ever. So like an Irish athlete that big, she's basically like the female Conor McGregor in Ireland, right? And she's fighting in Dublin for the first time. So we're in out of home all over Ireland during that time, but we wouldn't just have, always on out of home. It's because it's particularly, pertinent to that moment. We're doing some great organic YouTube stuff at the minute. So we have some, some in-stream stuff going on there. So it's case by case, and it's what's the purpose of the message that we're trying to send right now, rather than, yes, we do that channel, or no, we don't do that channel, if that makes sense.
You mentioned the first retail store in London, which opened, you say, October last year in 2022. Why was it important for a brand that's done so much online to have a physical footprint, physical presence?
If you remember when we went into the pandemic, everybody was saying e-commerce adoption just leaped forward 10 years, right? And we knew that everybody was bailing on their leases, right? So we'd had a plan in the background that we were formulating to do a bit of a test and learn retail strategy, maybe 2,000 square foot, see how it goes, then maybe evolve that a little bit, evolve that. But then almost like in a Warren Buffett-esque moment, Ben said to me, while everybody else is bailing from retail, maybe this is our moment to go all in. We always knew we wanted to remain D2C, so for there to be no bridge between the Gymshark customer and us. So it wasn't going to be Dick's Sporting Goods or JD Sports. And it was like, well, there's never going to be a better moment than right now to invest in something that, can really bring the fitness community together. And let's look around. So we looked around. We ended up on Regent Street, which is, for those who don't know, probably the most prestigious retail location in all of Europe, apart from maybe the Champs-Elysees. It's like, it's London's Fifth Avenue. And yeah, we got the chance to step into a store which during peacetime, if you want to call it that, we probably wouldn't have been able to afford. And now I'm so glad we did, because unfortunately, for a lot of businesses, the ecom 10-year adoption leap forward thing didn't ring true. Once we got out of the pandemic, people did go back offline again and wanted experiences and wanted to go out there. So now we're seeing more people realize that, the bet that we placed during the pandemic was probably quite a good one, and realizing that bricks and mortar isn't dead and there's still so much white space and so much headway there.
What does it mean when you say customer experience now? People talk about that a lot, going into a store and it's a customer experience. It's not just, I'm going to go in and pick up a sweatshirt. It's something else, right? What does that mean?
Well, in the Gymshark store, we've thought about experience as much as we have trading. We called it a space where we want to train and trade. Ben, our founder, jokingly said to me, it's the store's, 18,000 square foot on Regent Street, something like that. And Ben, when people say things to you and they're sort of joking but not joking, Ben said at the start, he said, I want to put an 18,000 square foot gym on Regent Street, and if there's room, we'll sell some stock in there as well. Right now, I was being a little bit facetious with that, but we gave that brief to a design agency who were great. What we ended up with was we have rails all around the store, which the stock hangs from, on lifting straps that go up to the ceiling. You can press a button and send all of that stock up into the roof, and you have the entire floor to host workout classes and stuff like that. So if you're walking down Regent Street on any given morning, particularly a Sunday morning, obviously before trading hours, you might come across 250 people doing a group workout on Regent Street, right? Somewhere where you're typically used to just seeing, revenue per square foot, shop window displays, stuff like that. And you walk past and you see somebody doing a HIIT workout seminar or an Afrobeats inspired dance fitness class. Do you know what I mean? So it's like the best possible billboard. Like a lot of people now, we've seen the Balenciaga 3D billboard, stuff like that. I don't think there's any better billboard than seeing like 200 something people actually sweating, actually working out in this new store with Gymshark over the and the Union Jack flying over the top of it. So it's a great, again, I told you earlier, the two words I want people to recount when we talk about Gymshark is fitness and community. I honestly can't think of a better way to instill that than to have them walking past a real life billboard like that.
Now, I want to ask you a question about AI, because I saw on LinkedIn you posted what might be considered a contrary viewpoint to what I guess most of the industry is viewing AI as, which is mostly in like a positive light right now. On LinkedIn, you stated, why rely on like soulless AI generated content when you can build real connections with your audience? Say no to chat GPT and yes to genuine authenticity. Can you describe your take on that? How might AI be a barrier to creativity?
Do you want to know something really funny about that? You've fallen into the trap which I placed. If you saw that in context, I typed into ChatGPT, give me a contrary opinion on ChatGPT, and it typed that out for me. So I just copy and pasted that from AI onto my LinkedIn and posted it. So it was AI criticizing AI. I don't actually believe that. I think AI can be game changing. I just thought, well, everybody on LinkedIn was talking about it and everybody on LinkedIn was saying how it's going to revolutionize everything. I thought, I wonder what if there's a contrary opinion. So I asked AI what it thought, and that was what it spat out to me. So I don't actually believe that. I think AI is incredible, and I think that what it's going to unlock for us is incredible. Like, I think what people thought the metaverse was going to do for us, actually AI is going to do for us instead. So yeah, you fell into my trap. I didn't say that, ChatGPT did.
And that's it for The Current. Stay tuned because next time we'll have the CMO of Canva, a graphic design platform.
We live in a more visual world than ever before. The world has just become completely visual. That's been accelerated, in the way that we work over the past few years through the pandemic and hybrid work. That's opened itself to new ways of collaborating and connecting and expressing ourselves.
The Current is produced by Wonder Media Network. Our theme is by Love and Caliber. The Trade Desk team includes Chris Brooklier and Kat Bessie.
And remember,
I suppose in a way, we're not Nike, we're not Adidas, we're not Lululemon, and that's why people love us, because we stand for something quite unique.
I'm Elise.
and I'm Damien.
And we'll see you next time.